If you were in the previous presentation from Alex North, you've probably heard about FIP 76, which basically is about to introduce direct data onboarding onto the network with the next network upgrade. So how many of you are SPs here in the room? I can certainly see one SP, even though they're not raising their hand. Okay. The idea of direct data onboarding is that basically you can now add data to the Filecoin network without going through the built-in storage market actor. What this means is the following. So basically, direct data onboarding is a label for changes to the built-in actors and the components that interact with them, which enable gas-cheap data onboarding. So the basic idea is that you no longer need to be sending PublishStorageDeals messages as an SP to the network to onboard data, but rather a few plus allocation is made by the client directly with the data cap verified registry actors. Direct data onboarding doesn't handle any payments, but as you know, most of the deals today don't really do any on-chain payments. They are handled off-band from the network. So what's the impact? Basically reduced gas costs for data onboarding. This means cheaper operations for SPs. So SPs currently need to be paying for publish storage deal messages, and they're quite expensive. Direct data onboarding changes this and moves this cost to the client. So now it's the client who's responsible for creating the allocation for a specific piece of data, and it's a lot cheaper than the existing publish storage deal message. It's worth noting that the existing methods continue to work. So the way you've currently been onboarding user data onto the network will continue to work, but you will now have this option to directly use direct few plus data and onboard more cheaply to the network. Also, chain state becomes more lightweight, given that the market actor is no longer going to be operated with. You no longer need to be storing on-chain data such as PCID, psize, label, etc. So within Boost, that's what the flow looks like. The data client who wants to store data on Filecoin creates an allocation for a specific provider and specific piece. Then again, they need to transfer the data to Boost, where Boost verifies that an allocation exists. So if such an allocation exists, Boost adds the piece to Lotus Miner. This is the flow for few plus data. Similar flow exists for regular deals, non-verified deals. In this case, the allocation is not going to exist, so it's up to the SP to decide if they want to handle that kind of data with the specific data client. So I'm going to do a quick demo of how that looks today. This is still experimental, given that those features have not yet ended up on the network. They'll probably be supported with the next network upgrade. Okay, so on my machine here, I'm running a DevNet with Lotus, Lotus Miner, and Boost. Those of you who are familiar with Boost are probably familiar with the Boost UI. As you can see, it's currently empty because it's DevNet, there are no deals, there is only one sector, and there is only one miner on that network. So basically what we're going to do is first initialize the client. Whoop. So what I'm doing right now is just initializing the data client who wants to store data onto the DevNet. And once that's done, we are going to add some data cap to it so that we can instantiate a few plus deal with it. In order to do that, basically the notary gives 100 megabytes worth of data cap to the default Boost wallet. And we just need to wait for a few seconds. It's a 3-second block delay, so it will work out soon enough. So if we check the default Boost wallet now, we basically see that it has data cap and it has some few to operate on the network. So the next stage is to prepare the data that we want to store with a given SP. So this snippet of code just generates a random piece of data and calculates the compy for that data that we need to send to the storage provider. So the next step is basically the part that direct data onboarding introduces as a new feature to the network, where now it becomes the responsibility of the storage client to create an allocation for the piece that they want to store with a particular SP. So the way that works is basically the storage client with their wallet, in this case it's the default Boost wallet, creates an allocation for this piece. So we basically specify the compy and the size of the compy and the storage provider who we want to create an allocation with. You can also have a list of pieces, so this could be a single message for a lot of data that this client wants to onboard to the network. And of course you have full control over when you send this piece of data, so you could also wait for base fee to be low on the network so that you don't spend too much money, too much fuel by sending this message as a client. So the message is now included on the chain. We also have some commands that can help us list allocations. And we can see that this allocation for PCID with the specified piece size has been made with the given client and the given miner. So the next stage is for this data to be transferred to the SP, and the SP can then onboard it whenever they want. Obviously, it has to be within the specified parameters for the deal. And the way that happens is with the Boost the import direct command. We specify the client who sends us this piece of data. We specify the compy because as a storage provider, we have to confirm that the data matches the one that the client wants to onboard. And obviously the allocation ID as well. And that's mostly it. So basically the storage provider has imported the data. So if we go back to the client, to the Boost UI, we see that a direct deal has been made with this SP, and it has worked up to the announcing to the indexer stage. So it looks very familiar to the way regular deals have been onboarded to the network so far. So that concludes the demo that I have for today. It's worth noting that we no longer hit the built-in storage market actor. So it's now up to the SP to maintain a mapping between the user data and the commitment on chain. So this also has some impact on the product side of Boost and how storage providers basically provide data to their clients. Well, that's all. Do you have any questions?
Not related to direct data onboarding, but just for the actually Boost. Why do you announce to the indexer before actually the ceiling is complete?
That's a very good question. This is still experimental feature. Ceiling, is not complete, and we are still actively building this feature.
Okay, so
actually,
in the regular flow, you'll
the regular flow waits for the commitment from the SP, and only then indices the deal to the indexer. So basically, what happened here is that Boost assumes that after a piece is successful, the piece will be sealed. Yeah, it's optimistic in a sense.
I have a question. So in the new direct data onboarding flow, the mapping between the SP and the client data should be somewhat mapped, and it's kind of very different flow because you can't look on chain and see here's the data. What other kinds of tools do we need to build so that this is a lot easier, or where are the opportunities to build tools here from your point of view?
Yeah, that's a very open-ended question. In my opinion, it really depends on the primitives that are being built in the Filecoin protocol. So based on the previous presentation from Alex, it sounds that we want to provide opportunity for SPs to onboard any data without any knowledge about the user data. So the Filecoin network thinks of data as in sectors, and they make commitments on those sectors at the moment, which does not directly correlate to user data. So I think we as a community need to define standards around user data and what we mean by that, similar to how, for example, NFTs work on Ethereum. So for example, you have NFTs that one can visualize on OpenSea. And when you think of an NFT, there are two components to it. There is the JPEG picture, for example, the most commonly known one, as well as the fact that somebody has complete ownership over it, which is the hash on chain. But those two things go together. The way I think about it with data on Filecoin is that you have the sector data, but you also need to know the reference to that sector data, and those two things go together. That's one use case, and we don't want to limit the Filecoin network to provide support only for that one use case. So similarly, an NFT might be, let's say, a real-world asset and not a JPEG. So not all deals on the Filecoin network will probably need that kind of reference. So the way I think about it is that we should probably build another layer on top of those primitives. So another layer on top of direct data and direct field plus. And that needs to be clearly communicated to the users so that it's clear what kind of commitment is being made on that data. Because as it stands today, DSPs, they prove that they keep the sector data on chain. That doesn't really give much confidence that the user will be able to retrieve their data out of that. And it's just about defining a proper vocabulary when we say data. What is it that we mean by that? Do we mean user data, so my cat.jpg, or do we mean sector data, the thing that DSP has made a commitment on chain and the thing that they'll lose money for if they stop proving it? So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it was quite an open-ended question, and it was a good answer.
Just this bit about the storage providers themselves having to maintain the mapping of what data's where and the deals are. Is there plans to provide any tooling to help them do that, or is this something that storage providers going to have to scramble to take care of individually when this gets deployed?
So that's an experimental stage at the moment. It's a product question, what I'm trying to say. We need to decide as a community how we want to build that. It could be done as an FRC onto the network so that, for example, some kind of an event gets emitted on chain so that it's easier to find that mapping. The same way it's easy to find all transfers of ERC20 tokens on Ethereum. It could look like something like this. At the moment, it's not implemented in that fashion on Filecoin. So if direct data FIP gets approved and this feature goes onto the network with the next network upgrade, it will pretty much be immediately up to the software to define that, which is the SP. So we'll probably have to think clearly how to implement this in Boost as a product feature that SPs can then provide to their clients. So I really hope, conversation starts now between SPs and various implementer teams so that we define what this feature looked like and what makes sense from a product perspective.